Good afternoon, everybody. It's KB5MIQ, Big Boy. Thought we'd talk a little bit today. Last night, HKV and DLX and I were talking, and decided we'll do a little video. I'm gonna call it Deep Dive into QSLing and QSL cards. I've touched on these in a couple of other videos, but we still seeing questions people are asking, so hopefully I can answer some questions. Hey, Ham Radio Cat, Aaron, my number one fan. Looks like Ham Radio Cat's going to show up with us today. Alrighty, let's talk a little bit about QSL cards. And we're going to go back to QSL card history. A QSL card is a written confirmation of either a two-way radio communication between two amateur radio stations, one-way reception of a signal, or reception of two-way communication by a third-party listener. Typical QSL cards are the same size and made from the same material as typical postcard, and most are sent through the mail as such. QSL card derived its name from the code QSL, a Q code message that stood for a statement or question when the code is followed by a question mark. In this case, QSL means you confirm receipt of my transmission, while QSL without a question mark means I confirm receipt of your transmission, and of course that's referring to the old Morse code CW way of communicating. That's where that comes from. During the early days of radio broadcasting, the ability for a radio set to receive distant signals was a source of pride to many consumers and hobbyists. Listeners would mail reception reports to radio broadcast stations, hope of getting a written letter to officially verify they heard a distant station. As the volume of reception reports increased, stations took to sending postcards containing a brief form of acknowledged reception. Collecting these cards became popular with radio listeners in the 20s and 30s, and reception reports were often used by early broadcasters to gauge effectiveness of their transmissions. The concept of sending a postcard to verify reception of a station and later two-way contact between them may have been independently invented several times. The earliest reference seems to be a card sent in 1916 from 8 Victor X-Ray in Buffalo, New York, to 3 Tango, Quebec, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In those days, ITU prefixes were not used. The standardized card with call sign, frequency, date, etc. may have been developed in 1919 by C.D. Hoffman, 8 Uniform X-Ray in Akron, Ohio. In Europe, by W.F. Bill Corsham, 2 Uniform Victor, first used a QSL card when operating from Harleston, England in 1922. Use in amateur radio. Amateur radio operators exchange QSL card information to confirm two-way radio contact between stations. Each card contains details about one or more contacts, the station and its operator. At a minimum, this includes the call sign of both stations participating in the contact, the time and date when it occurred, usually specified in the UTC or Universal Time Coordinated, radio frequency or band used, and the mode of transmission, and a signal report. The International Amateur Radio Union and its member societies recommend a maximum size of 3.5 by 5.5 inches, standard postcard size. Although some QSL cards are plain, they are a ham radio operator's calling card and therefore frequently used as an expression of individual creativity, from a photo of the operator at the station to original artwork, images of the operator's hometown, surrounding countryside, etc. Consequently, the collection of QSL cards especially interesting designs, has become a frequent addition to a simple gathering of printed documentation of a ham's communication over the course of his or her career. Normally sent using ordinary international postage systems, QSL cards can be sent either direct to an individual's address or via a country centralized Amateur Radio Association QSL Bureau, which collects and distributes cards for the country. That saves postage fees for the sender by sending several cards destined for a single country in one envelope, or large numbers of cards using parcel services. Although this reduces postage costs, it increases the delivery time because of the extra handling involved. In addition such incoming bureaus, there are also outgoing bureaus in some countries. The bureaus offer further postage savings by accepting cards destined for different countries and repackaging together in bundles sent to specific incoming bureaus. Most QSL bureaus are operated by national amateur radio societies, both incoming and outgoing, with a notable exception of the United States of America, are operated by the International Amateur Radio Union. For rare countries, the ones that there are very few radio operators, places with no reliable or even existing postal systems, including expeditions to remote areas, a volunteer QSL manager may handle the mailing of the cards. For expeditions, this may amount to thousands of cards. The payment for at least postage is appreciated and is required for a direct reply as opposed to a return via a bureau. The internet has enabled electronic notification as an alternative to mailing a physical card. These systems use computer databases to store the same information normally verified by QSL cards in electronic format. Some sponsors of amateur radio operating awards, which normally accept QSL cards as proof of contacts, may also recognize specific electronic QSL systems in verifying applications. One such system called eQSL, which enables electronic exchanges of QSLs as JPEG or GIF images, which may be printed on cards by the recipient's local inkjet or laser printer. Many logging programs now have direct electronic interface to transmit QSL details and real-time info to the eQSL CC database. CQ Amateur Radio been accepting electronic QSLs from eQSLs for its 4 award programs in January 2009. 1010 has been accepting eQSL since 2002. Another system, ARRL's Logbook of the World, allows confirmation to be submitted electronically that organizations DX Century Club and Worked All States Awards. Confirmations are in the form of a database record, electronically signed with the private key of the sender. This system simply matches database records but does not allow creation of pictorial QSL cards. Despite advantages of electronic QSLs and physical QSL cards are often historical, sentimental keepsakes of a memorable location heard or worked, or a pleasant contact with a new radio friend, and Serious Ham radio operator may have thousands of them. Some cards are plain white, others are multicolored, so on and so forth. And if you'll notice in the background of my shack here, you see that's what I've got my displays up. All my cards are displayed up there on the wall. I got a couple of sets for countries and the rest of them are for states. I highly recommend getting a QSL card. They're not that expensive. If we're going to pay these for radios, cheap QSL cards is a good way to go. About $30 for 100 cards. They got a lot of different designs. Now let's talk about QSL bureaus. The W5, which I'm going to use mine, is 5-call QSL bureau. I found out something about this. We were talking last night. It's in Oklahoma. It's where I would be set up at with them. And the W5 incoming bureau, we was talking on radio last night, and I could remember I'd got something from them. I haven't been real active with them in a long time. I used to get cards from them, but what they used to want you to do was send 5x7 envelopes with postage. Now, they only accept money credits. Cash, check, money order, PayPal. No self-addressed stamped envelopes, labels, or stamps. Due to the rising postage, supplies, and printing costs, the new fees $1 per envelope. Funds may be sent to the W5 incoming bureau, and it's got their address, Mounds, Oklahoma. And they've also got a search option here that you can check and see if you've got anything up there, and it gives you who your sorter is if you need to contact them. It's a pretty good idea. I may get back set up with it again. Okay, ARRL QSL Bureau referred me to this. That's what I was going to actually read something about the ARRL, but that's what they referred me to on these things. So, also, there's a little bit of history of my time with QSL cars. We was talking about this last night. When I got to be a ham in '91, you know, being on a budget, which is all my videos are centered for new hams and hams on a budget. I didn't have the money to buy the brand new call book every time it come out. And when me and HKV was joking with DLX, he's a lot younger than us, about our older boomer times is what we call boomer times ham radio. I'd go to ham swap meets and give a couple of bucks for a 3 or 4 year old one and keep it and use it as much as I could to send QSL cards. I've actually had ham radio operators read me their address and write it down over the air to send a card. Or one of us would say, okay, I'll send you the card and you get my address and return off my card. And I've done that before. Um, it's a good idea in other countries to, especially European countries, put a couple of bucks postage in there to help them out. And now with the QRZ page, you set up a profile on there and answer all their questions because it gives you a lot of good information on the QRZ. Each call signs page, you can look at mine and go to detail down at the bottom. It'll tell you where they'll QSL if they don't already have it in their biography. I always put on there, yes, I'll return QSL. I prefer direct QSLs myself. Now, you'll work some foreign countries, and DLX and I just worked in Namibia, country of Namibia, if I'm pronouncing it right, in Africa. And we're sending our cards to a German address. And most of the time when you send a card like that, you're going to get a pretty good chance you're going to get one in return. I know when I got my card from Cuba, I actually had to send it to Spain, to his QSL manager. And they'll have all the information there on the QRZ page as what you need to do if you need to send them a couple of bucks or self-addressed stamped envelopes or whatever. Now, U.S. postage going out of the country. Go to your local post office. I think they're $1 and a dime a piece, and buy you some international forever stamps. And that's what I use on all my out of the U.S. postage. I keep some here on my bench now. Also, there's something else. On a more funny note, when I first got into this, a boy that helped me get set up, it was another ham. We were talking about QSL cards, and he said if you get certain contacts, it doesn't hurt to send a couple of bucks with to be sure you get the card back. Well, I worked 2 stations in Argentina one night on 10 meters. And they both told me just send both cards to one address, and we'll send them back to you. Well, I put a couple of bucks in the envelope with 2 cards, sent them off. A couple of weeks later, I go to the post office, and I got this huge envelope from Argentina. And I open it up, and it's their QSL cards, and it's some Argentine money, and they're having the World's Fair in Argentina that year. I got all kinds of stuff about that. And it kind of confused me, so I went and asked that guy, I said, hey, man, this is what I did. This is what I got back. He said, oh, man, I should have clarified that with you. He said, that's usually European or communist bloc countries that need a little money because a lot of them guys are running on club stations. He said, anything in South America, they probably got more money than you got, and they're probably still laughing about that. But still, if it's a country I hadn't got, I always stick a couple of bucks in there in the card when I send it off. And I've gotten to where here lately, I will put a card size envelope in there already stamped with my return address. I won't put postage on it. That's what the couple of bucks are for. But QSL, and I'm not a big fan of EQSL. I think we still should send cards. Design you a card. I love to get them. I love to send them to people. It's just a good, fun part of the hobby. And when you have somebody come in your shack that's not a ham radio operator, they look up and say, hey, man, you've talked to South Africa? You've talked to Japan? I go, yeah, right up there. It's all the card proof of it. It's impressive, and it might get might get some ham radio operators out of the deal. And that's why we talk a lot about these new hams stopping at technician and staying on VHF, UHF. You're missing a really fun part of the hobby on QSL cards. So get you some cards printed up. If you want to use the bureau, look up whatever bureau, whatever call sign you area you're in the U.S. and see what their requirements are for incoming QSL cards, or both ways if you want to go that route. Personally, I still prefer to mail them direct and get them direct. I may seriously set back up with the 5 land QSL bureau just in case I run into some people that want to prefer to use the bureau. I want to be sure to get the card. But get you some cards printed up, start sending some out, and get on HF. Generally, as a rule, unless you're working sideband on VHF, I'm going to say you don't send QSL cards unless somebody asks you to. I'm not saying you can't, but I've never sent a QSL card for just local FM stuff, repeaters or FM direct. Uh, I ain't saying you can if you want to. I just personally haven't done it. In fact, I don't even log VHF repeater chats at all. All my logbook is strictly 6 meters and above. Now, if I ever worked 2 meter sideband, I will log that in there, but I've never had much luck with 2 meter sideband. But QSL cards, print some up. Use cheap QSL companies are a pretty good place. It's a real good place to get them from. I've seen a lot of guys talking about when they first got in this. There used to be a place called the Little Print Shop in Pflugerville, Texas, that everybody got their cards from. I've still got a bunch of cards left from the Little Print Shop with the wrong addresses on them. But get some cards printed up, enjoy the hobby, get on HF. 10 meters looking like it's fixing to start picking up. 17's been picking up. I know DLX and I both worked that Nambia station on 17, and I got another South African station a couple of months ago on 17. So get on HF, enjoy the hobby, get some cards out there. Appreciate everybody who's subscribed to the channel. Ham Radio Cat does too. Sometimes you jump up here, sometimes you don't. Anyway, hope everybody keeps doing this. I appreciate everybody subscribed to the channel. Hit 173 subscribers. Everybody have a great week. It's KB5 MIQ Big Boy 73.